They say you never really know someone until you see them at their worst. I used to think that was just something cynical people said to justify their trust issues. After all, I'd known Emily for 12 years, been married to her for 8. We'd weathered job losses, family deaths, and the stress of raising 2 kids in an economy that seemed designed to crush young families. I thought we were a team. I thought our foundation was solid. I was wrong. What you're about to read isn't a tale of sudden betrayal that came out of nowhere. Looking back now, with the clarity that only devastation can bring, I can see the hairline fractures that appeared months before everything shattered. The late-night texts she'd quickly minimize when I walked into the room. The new interest in her appearance, not for me, but for herself, she claimed. The sudden need for girls' nights that became a weekly occurrence. The emotional distance that crept in so gradually, I didn't notice until the chasm between us had become uncrossable. But here's the thing about betrayal. Even when you suspect it, even when the evidence is mounting, part of you refuses to believe it. Because believing it means accepting that the person you chose to build a life with, the mother of your children, the woman you trusted with your heart and your future, has been living a lie. It means accepting that while you were working overtime to save for your daughter's braces and your son's college fund, she was investing her energy elsewhere. It means confronting the fact that you've been a fool. My name is Daniel Wright, and this is the story of how my marriage imploded, how I discovered the truth, and what I did about it. This isn't a story about forgiveness or reconciliation. This isn't one of those tales where everyone learns a valuable lesson and grows as people. This is about consequences, accountability, and the cold, hard reality that some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt, and shouldn't be. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in March. I'd left work early, something I rarely did, because I'd managed to close a major account 3 weeks ahead of schedule. My boss, Thomas, had practically shoved me out the door at 2 in the afternoon, telling me to go surprise my wife, maybe take her to an early dinner. It seemed like a great idea at the time. Our house in suburban Portland sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where people still waved to each other and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. I'd always loved coming home to it. The white 2-story colonial with black shutters represented everything Emily and I had worked for. Her car was in the driveway, which surprised me. She usually picked up our kids, Lily, age 7, and Jake, age 5, from school around 3. I checked my watch. 2:47 p.m. Maybe she'd forgotten something and come back home. I pulled into the garage, grabbed my briefcase, and walked through the mudroom into the kitchen. The house was quiet except for a faint sound coming from upstairs. Music, maybe? I set my keys on the counter and headed for the stairs. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Emily's laugh, but different somehow. More uninhibited. It was coming from our bedroom. My heart started pounding, though I couldn't have told you why at that exact moment. Maybe some primitive part of my brain had already figured out what my conscious mind refused to accept. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see movement. I pushed it open. Emily was on our bed. The bed we'd picked out together at that furniture store in Beaverton. The one where we'd laughed about how many years it would take to pay off. But she wasn't alone. She was with a man I'd never seen before, both of them tangled in sheets that I'd washed just 3 days ago. Time did something strange in that moment. It simultaneously froze and accelerated. I stood there, unable to move, unable to speak, while my brain tried to process what my eyes were seeing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake, some weird nightmare I'd wake up from. But I didn't wake up. Emily saw me first. Her face went from flushed pleasure to white shock in an instant. She scrambled to cover herself, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The man, younger than me, maybe late 20s, with the kind of build that suggested he spent more time at the gym than at a desk. turned to look at me with an expression that was more annoyed than embarrassed. "Daniel," Emily gasped, clutching the sheet to her chest. "You're home early." That's what she said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "This isn't what it looks like." Just a statement of fact. I was home early. As if the problem wasn't what she was doing, but my inconvenient timing. I still couldn't speak. My throat had closed up, my chest felt like someone had parked a car on it, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to shove them in my pockets. The man, I'd learned later his name was Tyler Bennett, had the audacity to look at his watch. "I should go," he said, as casually as if he were leaving a business meeting. He got out of my bed, started pulling on his clothes right there in front of me. Designer jeans, expensive sneakers, a polo shirt that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in 6 months. He didn't hurry. He didn't apologize. He just dressed, grabbed his keys from my nightstand, and walked past me like I was a piece of furniture. The sound of Tyler's car fading down the street left a vacuum of silence that felt almost physical. I stood in my own bedroom doorway, staring at my wife as she sat on the edge of our bed, still wrapped in the sheet. She hadn't moved to get dressed, hadn't said anything beyond that initial statement of fact. "You're home early." Not an apology, not an explanation, just an observation delivered in the same tone she might use to comment on the weather. I waited for something else, some follow-up, some attempt at damage control or explanation or even a breakdown. But Emily just sat there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not defiant exactly, not ashamed either, just waiting. "That's it?" The words came out rougher than I intended. "That's all you have to say?" She pulled the sheet tighter around herself. "What do you want me to say, Daniel?" The question hit me like a slap. What did I want her to say? I wanted her to grovel, to cry, to beg for forgiveness she didn't deserve and wouldn't get. I wanted her to show some sign that this mattered, that our marriage and our family in the last 8 years meant something more than an inconvenience she'd been working around. Instead, she was asking me what I wanted, as if I was the one making unreasonable demands. "How long?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Flat, mechanical. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters." She looked away toward the window. The afternoon light caught the side of her face, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman I'd married. The resemblance made my stomach turn. "4 months," she said finally. "A little over." 4 months. I did the math automatically. That would put it right around Thanksgiving. While we'd been hosting my parents and arguing about whether to get a real tree or a fake one. While I'd been working overtime to make sure we could afford decent presents for the kids. "Where did you meet him?" "The gym." She said it simply, matter-of-factly. "He's a personal trainer there." The gym. The one she'd joined in October, claiming she needed to do something for herself to feel healthier. I'd encouraged it, told her she deserved it. Even adjusted my schedule to watch the kids during her evening sessions twice a week. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. And the girls' nights? I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. Sometimes those were real, sometimes they weren't. She still wasn't looking at me. "Jennifer knows. She's been covering for me." Jennifer. Emily's best friend since college. The woman who'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding. Who came to our house for barbecues and brought her kids over for play dates with Lily and Jake. "Great," I said. "That's just great." Emily finally turned back to face me. "I didn't plan for this to happen. No one ever does." The bitterness in my voice could have stripped paint. "It just happens, right? You just accidentally ended up in bed with a guy half your age, repeatedly, for 4 months. Don't do that." "Don't do what?" "Don't act like you're completely blindsided here." Her voice had an edge now, the first real emotion I'd heard from her since I'd walked in. We've been falling apart for years, Daniel. You know that. Falling apart, I repeated. So that makes this okay? I didn't say it makes it okay. I'm saying it didn't come out of nowhere. I wanted to argue with her, to tell her she was rewriting history, making excuses, shifting blame. But there was a grain of truth in what she was saying, and that made it worse. Things hadn't been perfect between us. We'd had our rough patches, job losses, family deaths, and the stress of raising two kids while trying to keep our heads above water financially. We'd grown distant at times, disconnected. But I'd thought we were working through it. I'd thought that was what marriage was, choosing each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Apparently, I'd been the only one thinking that. Where are the kids? I asked, changing direction because I couldn't handle this particular argument right now. At my mother's. I was supposed to pick them up at 5. Of course, she'd planned this, arranged childcare, made sure she had a clear window for her afternoon with Tyler. The premeditation of it made everything worse somehow. I need you to leave, I said. She blinked. What? Leave, get dressed and get out. Go to your mother's, go to Tyler's, go to Jennifer's. I don't care. But I need you out of this house. Daniel. Now, Emily. Something in my tone must have convinced her I wasn't negotiating. She stood, still clutching the sheet, and moved toward the closet. I turned away, not wanting to watch her dress, not wanting to be in the same room with her for another second. I went downstairs and stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. I could hear her moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the sound of a suitcase zipper. She came down 10 minutes later, dressed in jeans and a sweater, a small rolling suitcase behind her. She'd put on makeup at some point, I noticed. Fixed her hair. She looked composed, put together, like she was heading out for a weekend trip rather than being thrown out of her own house. We need to talk about this, she said. About what happens next. Not today. The kids are at your mother's until 5, which gives you 3 hours to figure out what you're going to tell them. I looked at her directly for the first time since she'd come downstairs. But they're not finding out about this today. You understand me? You don't say a word to them until we figure out how to handle this. She nodded slowly. Okay. And I want you to get tested. Her face flushed. Daniel, I want you to get tested for everything, and I want to see the results. That's non-negotiable. Another nod, this one smaller. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but I turned away, dismissing her. I heard her footsteps cross the kitchen tile, then the sound of the garage door opening. Her car started. The garage door closed. And then she was gone. I stood in my kitchen, our kitchen, the one we'd renovated 2 years ago, arguing over cabinet colors and countertop materials, and waited to feel something. Rage, grief, anything. Instead, I just felt empty. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Thomas. Drinks tonight to celebrate? You earned it. I'd forgotten about the account. The big win that had sent me home early, that had led to me discovering my wife in bed with another man. It felt like it had happened in another lifetime, to another person. I texted back, rain check, family emergency. Another buzz, almost immediately. Everything okay? Will be, I typed, though I had no idea if that was true. Talk tomorrow. I set the phone on the counter and looked around the house. Everything was exactly as it had been this morning when I'd left for work. The breakfast dishes I'd promised to load into the dishwasher later were still in the sink. Jake's backpack was on the floor by the mudroom door where he'd dropped it yesterday. Lily's art project, a papier-mâché volcano, sat on the dining room table, waiting to be finished. Normal. Everything looked completely normal. But normal was over. Normal was done. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be this. I pulled out my phone again and did something I'd never imagined I'd need to do. I searched for divorce attorneys in Portland. I called my parents first. The conversation lasted maybe 3 minutes. My mother picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the television in the background, one of those afternoon talk shows she pretended not to watch. Daniel, is everything okay? I need you and Dad to pick up the kids from Emily's mother's house at 5. Can you do that? A pause. Of course, but... And keep them overnight. Maybe tomorrow night too. I'll explain later. Daniel, what's wrong? Are you sick? Is Emily? Emily's fine. The word tasted like copper. I just need you to get the kids. Please. My mother knew better than to push. 27 years of marriage to my father had taught her when to ask questions and when to simply act. We'll be there at 5. Should we tell them anything? Tell them Mom and Dad need to sort some things out. Tell them they're going to have a sleepover with Grandma and Grandpa. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Not because I'm naturally organized. Emily was always the one with the color-coded calendars and meal plans. But because if I didn't focus on something concrete, I was going to put my fist through the wall. Immediate priorities. 1. Parents get kids. 2. Find lawyer. 3. Bank accounts. 4. Document everything. 5. STD test. The last one made my stomach turn. I'd been with Emily for 12 years. I'd trusted her with my body, my health, my life. Now I had to get tested like some college kid after spring break. I opened my laptop and searched for divorce attorneys in Portland. The results were overwhelming. Pages and pages of law firms with names like Family First Legal and New Beginnings Law Group. Marketing bullshit. There was nothing family first about this, and I didn't want a new beginning. I wanted my old life back, the one where my wife didn't screw personal trainers in our bed. I clicked on a firm called Preston and Associates. The website was clean, professional, no stock photos of happy families or sunrises over mountains. Just facts. Practice areas. Attorney bios. I called the number. Preston and Associates, this is Brenda speaking. I need to schedule a consultation for a divorce. Of course, let me get some basic information from you. Her voice was kind but efficient. She'd done this 1,000 times. Have you and your spouse separated? As of about an hour ago, yes. I see. And are there children involved? 2. A daughter, 7. A son, 5. Okay, Mr. Preston has an opening tomorrow at 10 a.m., or we have Thursday at 2 p.m. Tomorrow, Wednesday, less than 24 hours from now. The speed of it felt surreal, like I was scheduling a dentist appointment instead of dismantling my entire life. Tomorrow at 10. Perfect. I'll need your name and contact information. After I hung up, I went upstairs. I'd avoided it since Emily left, but I needed clothes for the kids. Pajamas, school outfits, toothbrushes, things they'd need at my parents' house. The bedroom door was still open. The bed was exactly as I'd left it, sheets twisted, comforter half on the floor. I could smell her perfume in the air. And something else. Him. I grabbed my phone and took pictures. The bed. The room. Everything. Then I stripped the sheets, the same ones I'd washed 3 days ago, and stuffed them into a trash bag. The comforter, too. The pillows. All of it. In Lily's room, I packed her backpack with school clothes and her favorite stuffed rabbit. In Jake's room, I grabbed his dinosaur pajamas and the small blanket he'd had since he was a baby. Normal things. The kind of things a father packs for his kids. Except nothing about this was normal. My phone buzzed. Emily. We need to talk about this. I stared at the message. 3 hours ago, I'd been married. 3 hours ago, I'd thought I knew my life. Now my wife was texting me like we were negotiating a business deal. I didn't respond. Another message came through. You can't just kick me out of my own house. My house. I'd made the down payment with money I'd saved for 3 years before we even got engaged. We'd refinanced in my name when her credit score tanked after she maxed out a store card she'd opened without telling me. But I didn't text that. I texted, "Talk to your lawyer." Then I blocked her number. The silence in the house was different now. Before, it had been oppressive, suffocating. Now it felt like breathing room, space to think. I went back downstairs and opened our laptop, the one we shared, the one Emily used for her online shopping and recipe searches. I'd never snooped before, never had a reason to. Trust, right? I was done trusting. I opened her email first. She'd stayed logged in because why wouldn't she? I was the faithful husband who respected her privacy. The inbox was mostly junk. Promotional emails from clothing stores, notifications from social media, newsletters she'd never read. I searched for Tyler's name. Nothing. I tried Jim. A few emails from the fitness center where she'd joined in October. I opened them. Membership confirmation, class schedules, a reminder about personal training packages. Then I found it. An email from November, subject line, January special, personal training. Hi, Emily. It was great meeting you in spin class. I think you'd really benefit from one-on-one sessions. I'm offering a special rate for new clients in January, $50 session instead of the usual $75. Let me know if you're interested. Tyler. Professional, friendly, nothing that would raise suspicion if a husband happened to see it. Except I knew what had happened next. I checked her sent folder. She'd replied, "That sounds great. When can we start?" January. She'd said the affair started around Thanksgiving, so this email was after they'd already been sleeping together. This was cover documentation she could point to if I ever asked questions. I kept digging. Her text messages were on her phone, which she'd taken with her, but I found her Facebook messages on the laptop. She had two accounts, one under her real name, one under Emma Wilson, with a profile picture of a sunset. The fake account had 3 friends. Tyler was one of them. I clicked on their message thread. The messages went back to November. Hundreds of them. Some were logistical. Can you get away Thursday? And my place at 2? But others were worse. Intimate. The kind of messages I thought she only sent to me. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can I see you again? This is crazy, but I don't want to stop. I read them all, every single one. It took an hour, maybe more. My coffee went cold on the table beside me. Outside, I heard a car door slam. A dog barked. Life continued, normal and mundane, while I cataloged my wife's betrayal in real time. There were no messages from the past week. The last one was from Friday. See you Tuesday. Can't wait. Today was Tuesday. She'd planned this, arranged for the kids to be gone, made sure I'd be at work, set aside the afternoon for him. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a folder on my desktop labeled Documentation. Then I logged into our bank accounts. We had 3. Joint checking, joint savings, and my personal account from before we got married that I'd kept open for direct deposit from work. The joint checking had $3,847. The savings had 12,203s, money we'd been setting aside for Jake's kindergarten costs next year and Lily's braces. I transferred half of each into my personal account. Not to be vindictive, because the lawyer would tell me to do it anyway, and I wasn't going to be the idiot who left everything accessible while Emily drained the accounts out of spite. My phone rang. My mother. We have the kids. They're fine. Lily asked why Mommy wasn't there to pick them up, but I told her you both had things to do. Thank you. Daniel. Her voice softened. What happened? I could have lied. Could have said we had a fight, that we needed space, that it was complicated. But I was done lying, done protecting Emily's reputation. She's been cheating on me. I came home early and found her with someone. Silence. Then, oh, honey, the kids can't know. Not yet. I have a lawyer appointment tomorrow. Of course. They'll stay here as long as you need. Your father and I, we're here for you. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen and watched the light fade outside. The neighbors across the street came home from work. 2 houses down, someone's sprinkler system turned on. Normal Tuesday evening things. At 6:15, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Emily. You blocked me. Real mature. I'm staying at Jennifer's. We need to figure out custody and I want my clothes. I saved the number under Emily, do not answer, and didn't reply. Instead, I ordered pizza. Ate 3 slices standing at the counter. Threw the rest away. Then I went upstairs, avoided the bedroom, and slept in the guest room on sheets that didn't smell like betrayal. The guest room mattress felt like concrete. I'd never actually slept in here. This room had always been theoretical, a place for visitors we never had. The sheets smelled faintly of detergent and nothing else, sterile and unwelcoming. I stared at the ceiling, watching shadows from the streetlight outside shift across the textured surface. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, silent. I'd expected more texts from Emily, demands, explanations, something. But after that single message about custody and her clothes, nothing. Maybe Jennifer had advised her to stop. Maybe her lawyer had, if she'd already called one. The thought should have worried me. Instead, I felt only a dull sort of satisfaction that I'd moved first. Sleep came in fragments. I'd drift off, then jolt awake with the image of Tyler's casual annoyance burned into my mind. The way he'd reached for his pants like this was an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. The way Emily had pulled the sheet up to her chest, my sheet, the one I'd paid for, as if modesty mattered at that point. At 5:43 a.m., I gave up trying. The house felt different in the pre-dawn darkness. Hostile. Every familiar object seemed to mock me. The wedding photo still hanging in the hallway, the kids' artwork on the refrigerator, the coffee maker Emily had insisted we needed even though the old one worked fine. I made coffee anyway, sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started making lists. The lawyer appointment was at 10. I had 4 hours to prepare. I opened a new document and began typing everything I could remember about our finances. Joint accounts, I'd already handled those. But there was the mortgage, her car payment, the credit cards. My name was on all of it. I needed to know exactly what I was liable for. The kids' college funds were separate, thank God. I'd set those up in their names only after reading some article about asset protection. Emily had called it paranoid at the time. Funny how paranoia looks like wisdom now. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. My mother. "How are the kids?" I asked instead of hello. "Still sleeping." "Daniel, what's going on? You sounded... Your father and I are worried." I closed my eyes. "Emily and I are separating. I found her with someone yesterday." Silence. Then, "Oh, honey. Oh, no. I need you to keep Lily and Jake for a few more days if you can. Just until I figure out what to tell them." Of course we will. Do you need... Should we come over?" "Not yet. I have a lawyer appointment this morning. I'll call you after." "Daniel." Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." "Yeah, me too." We hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling the weight of it. In a few hours, I'd have to call Emily's mother, too. Carol deserved to know why her grandchildren were suddenly staying with my parents instead of her. She'd probably already called Emily, probably already heard some version of events that painted me as the villain for throwing her daughter out. The thought made my jaw clench. At 7, I showered and dressed. Business casual. I wanted to look competent, together. The man in the mirror looked older than he had yesterday morning. New lines around the eyes. A tightness in the jaw that hadn't been there before. I grabbed the folder I'd prepared last night. Printed screenshots, bank statements, the timeline I'd constructed from Emily's messages. Everything organized with tabs and labels. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The law office was in downtown Portland, tucked between a coffee shop and a real estate agency. I arrived 20 minutes early and sat in my car, breathing slowly, trying to calm the tremor in my hands. At 9:55, I walked in. The receptionist was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. Mr. Wright? Yes. Mr. Preston is ready for you. Right this way. The office was smaller than I'd expected. Neat, professional, but not ostentatious. Law books lined one wall, diplomas, and certifications on another. Preston stood when I entered, mid-40s, graying at the temples, firm handshake. Daniel, please sit. Can I get you coffee? Water? I'm fine. He settled behind his desk, pulling out a legal pad. I reviewed the information you sent last night. Before we go further, I want to make sure you understand. I'm here to give you options and guidance. The decisions are ultimately yours. I understand. Good. Now tell me what happened. Start from the beginning. I did. Kept my voice level, factual. The discovery, Emily's reaction, Tyler's casual dismissal, the evidence I'd found on her computer, the financial steps I'd already taken. Preston took notes, occasionally asking questions. How long had we been married? Any previous separations? Had Emily shown any indication she wanted to reconcile? She wants to talk about custody, I said. That's all she said. And what do you want? The question landed harder than it should have. I want my kids. I want to make sure they're safe and stable. And I want to make sure Emily doesn't walk away from this like nothing happened. Preston set down his pen. Let me be direct with you, Daniel. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state. That means the affair, while morally reprehensible, won't factor into the divorce settlement itself. The court doesn't punish infidelity. My stomach dropped. So she just gets away with it? I didn't say that. What it means is we focus on what the court does care about. The best interests of the children, equitable division of assets, and fair support arrangements. The affair can be relevant if it affected marital finances or if her relationship with Tyler creates an unsafe environment for the kids. How would we prove that? We'd need evidence that her behavior put the children at risk. Was she bringing Tyler around them? Spending marital funds on the affair? Neglecting parental duties? I thought about the gym membership, the new clothes, the girls' nights that were really hotel rooms. She was lying to them, using her mother and her friend to cover. That's teaching them that deception is acceptable. It's a start, but courts are reluctant to restrict custody based on infidelity alone. What we need to focus on is building a case for primary custody based on stability. You have the house, steady employment, family support. If Emily moved in with Tyler or is living with her friend, that's less stable. She's at Jennifer's, her friend who helped cover for the affair. Preston made a note. That works in our favor. Now, let's talk about finances. You said you transferred half the joint accounts? Yes, around $18,000. Smart. Oregon is a community property state, so anything acquired during the marriage is presumed jointly owned. By taking half, you're protecting yourself without overreaching. The house, is it in both names? Yes, we bought it 6 years ago. Current mortgage balance? About $240,000. It's worth maybe $420. So roughly $180 in equity. You'll need to decide if you want to keep it or sell. Keeping it means buying out her half of the equity, which would be $90,000 plus whatever the court awards in asset division. The number hit me like a fist. I don't have $90,000. You might be able to refinance, or we negotiate other assets to offset it. Her car, retirement accounts, whatever else exists. The goal is to make you whole while ensuring the children maintain stability. We talked for another hour, child support calculations, custody schedules, temporary orders. Preston explained that we'd file for dissolution of marriage, request temporary custody, and push for mediation before trial if possible. Mediation is cheaper and faster, he said, but it requires both parties to negotiate in good faith. If Emily contests custody or makes unreasonable demands, we go to court. How long does that take? 6 months to a year, typically. Could be longer if it gets contentious. A year. A year of limbo, of splitting time with my kids, of watching Emily play victim while I paid for her mistakes. Preston must have seen something in my face. I know this feels overwhelming, but you've done everything right so far. You documented, you protected your finances, you didn't make rash decisions. That discipline will serve you well. What's the next step? I'll draft the petition for dissolution and temporary custody. We'll file by end of week. Emily will be served and she'll have 30 days to respond. In the meantime, I recommend you and Emily establish a temporary parenting schedule. Something in writing, agreed upon by both parties. It shows the court you're cooperative and focused on the children. And if she's not cooperative, then we file for an emergency custody hearing and let a judge decide. But that's a last resort. It's expensive, and judges don't like parents who can't communicate. I left the office at 11:30 with a retainer agreement signed and a check written for $5,000. The first of many, Preston had warned. Contested divorces could run $20,000, $30,000 or more. Worth it. Every penny would be worth it if it meant protecting Lily and Jake. I sat in my car and called my mother. Told her what the lawyer said, that I needed a few more days before bringing the kids home. Take whatever time you need, she said. They're fine here. They miss you, though. Lily keeps asking when you're coming to get them. My throat closed. Tell her soon. Tell her Daddy loves her. She knows, honey. They both know. I ended the call and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. The downtown traffic moved past, people going about their normal lives. Work, lunch meetings, errands. All of them blissfully unaware that my entire world had imploded. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Emily. Jennifer gave me a new phone. We need to talk about the kids. When can I see them? I stared at the message. She'd gotten a burner phone, or Jennifer had added a line. Smart. Made it harder for me to ignore her. I typed back, "They're safe. My lawyer will contact yours about custody arrangements." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I don't have a lawyer yet. Can't we work this out ourselves? I almost laughed. She wanted to negotiate directly without legal protection. Wanted me to be reasonable, to compromise, to make this easy for her. Get a lawyer, Emily. We're doing this the right way. I blocked the new number and drove home. The drive home felt longer than usual, even though I'd made the trip thousands of times. My mind kept circling back to Emily's voice on those calls, first apologetic, then frustrated, then angry. The progression had taken less than 3 hours. That had to be some kind of record. I pulled into the driveway at 6:15 p.m. The house looked the same as always. White siding, black shutters, the porch light I'd installed last summer. Nothing about it suggested that everything inside had changed. The neighbor's kid was shooting baskets in his driveway. Mrs. Patterson walked her dog past my mailbox like she did every evening. Normal. All of it so aggressively normal. Inside, the silence hit me first. No TV in the background. No sound of the kids arguing over whose turn it was to pick the show. Just quiet, and the faint smell of the coffee I'd made that morning before work. Before I'd closed the Greenfield account. Before I'd come home early. Was that really just yesterday? I set my keys on the counter, same spot as always, and noticed Emily's coffee mug in the sink. She'd left it there yesterday morning, and I'd been too busy being devastated to care about dishes. The normalcy of it made my chest tight. How many mornings had we stood in this kitchen together, drinking coffee, talking about nothing important. How many of those mornings had she been thinking about him? My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Kids are fed and in pajamas. Lily asked about Emily twice. What should I tell them? I stared at the message. What should she tell them? The truth seemed too brutal. Your mother was sleeping with her personal trainer, so daddy's getting a divorce. But lying felt worse. I'd had enough lies to last a lifetime. Tell them mom and dad need to work some things out. I'll talk to them tomorrow. Not a lie. Not quite. We did need to work things out, just not in the way the kids would imagine. Another buzz. This time from a number I didn't recognize. Daniel, this is Emily. I'm using Jennifer's phone. Please don't block this one. We need to talk about the kids. I felt the anger rise up hot and sharp. She was with Jennifer. Of course she was. The same Jennifer who'd helped her lie for 4 months. The same Jennifer who'd probably covered for her while I was working overtime to pay for Lily's braces and Jake's preschool. I deleted the message without responding. The house felt too empty, too quiet. I found myself walking through the rooms like I was seeing them for the first time. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents 3 months ago. The dining table where we'd celebrated Jake's 5th birthday in January. The hallway where we'd mark the kids' heights on the doorframe, a new line every few months. Evidence of a life. Our life. Except it hadn't been our life, had it? Not really. Not for the past 4 months at least. Maybe longer. Emily had said we'd been falling apart for years. Had we? I'd thought we were fine. Not perfect. No marriage was perfect. But fine. Solid. We'd had our rough patches, sure. The year after Jake was born had been hard. Emily had dealt with what her doctor called postpartum depression, though she'd refused to call it that. She'd said she was just tired. Just adjusting. And then she'd gotten better. Or so I thought. Maybe she'd just gotten better at hiding it. I ended up in the kitchen again, staring at the refrigerator. Photos held up by magnets. Lily's school picture from this year, Jake's drawing of our family, 4 stick figures and a dog we didn't have, a snapshot from last summer's trip to the coast. We looked happy in that photo. Emily was smiling, her arm around my waist. I was holding Jake on my shoulders. Lily was making a peace sign at the camera. Had she been unhappy then? Had she already been thinking about finding someone else? My phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. I looked at the screen. Jennifer's number. I answered. Daniel, thank God. Emily's voice came through, quick and breathless. Listen, I know you're angry. I blocked you twice, I said. My voice came out flat. Calm. I barely recognized it. That should have sent a message. I know, but we have to talk about Lily and Jake. They need their father. They've got one. What they don't need is to hear from you right now. That's not fair. Her voice cracked. They're my children too. You should have thought about that before you brought Tyler Bennett into our bed. Silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing. I never wanted them to be hurt by this, she said finally. Then you shouldn't have done it. Daniel, please, can we meet somewhere? Talk in person? There's so much we need to figure out. That's what lawyers are for. I don't want to do this through lawyers. She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. That particular catch she got when she was trying not to sob. I'd heard it before, when her father died, when she'd had a miscarriage between Lily and Jake, when her sister moved across the country. I'd held her through all of those moments, comforted her, told her everything would be okay. I felt nothing. You don't get to decide that, I said. You gave up that right when you created a fake Facebook account to send intimate messages to your personal trainer. Another silence. Longer this time. How did you... She stopped. You went through my computer. I documented evidence of your affair. Preston said it was smart. Preston? My attorney. You already have an attorney? Her voice shifted. The tears were gone, replaced by something harder. Jesus, Daniel, this happened yesterday. Can't we even try to what? Work it out? Go to counseling? Rebuild trust? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. You had 4 months to think about our marriage. 4 months to decide if what we had was worth keeping. You made your choice. It wasn't that simple. It really was. I could hear voices in the background. Jennifer, probably, telling Emily what to say. The thought made my jaw clench. The kids are going to ask questions, Emily said. What are you going to tell them? The truth. Age appropriate, but the truth. Which is what exactly? That their mother made choices that hurt our family. That sometimes adults make mistakes that can't be fixed. That we're going to live in different houses now, but we both still love them. You're going to make me the villain. I don't have to make you anything, Emily. You did that yourself. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was cold, controlled. The tears were gone completely. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, fine. But don't think you're going to take my kids away from me. I'm their mother. No judge is going to give you full custody just because I had an affair. Preston said the same thing. Oregon's a no-fault state. The affair doesn't matter much for custody. I paused. But stability does. And right now, I'm the one with the house, the steady income, and the family support system. You're the one staying with your affair-covering best friend and dodging block numbers. You son of a... I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I set the phone down on the counter and gripped the edge of the granite, breathing slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Something I'd learned in a stress management seminar at work years ago. The phone buzzed with a text. Jennifer's number again. You're being cruel. I picked up the phone and typed back, I'm being honest. There's a difference. Then I blocked Jennifer's number too. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with my neck screaming and my phone buzzing on the coffee table. 6:30 a.m., my parents' number. Hey, Dad. Morning, son. Just wanted to check in before the kids wake up. How are you holding up? I sat up, rubbing my face. I've been better. Your mother's making pancakes. The kids don't know anything's wrong yet. We told them you and Emily had some work things to handle. Thanks. I'll figure out what to say soon. Just not yet. Take your time. We can keep them as long as you need. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, our kitchen, and looked around. Emily's coffee mug still sat in the sink from Monday morning. Her grocery list was still magnetized to the fridge. Milk, bread, chicken breasts, Jake's snacks. Like she'd been planning to come back and make dinner, play mom, pretend everything was normal. I grabbed the list and crumpled it. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Daniel, please. We need to talk about the kids. You can't just shut me out. I'm their mother. I blocked the number and poured myself coffee. Work was a blur. Thomas stopped by my desk around 10, dropped a hand on my shoulder. Preston's office called, said you might need some flexibility this week. I didn't ask him to. Relax. Attorney-client privilege and all that. He just said you had a family situation and might need some time. Didn't say what. Thomas leaned against my cubicle wall. You need anything, you let me know. Take a personal day if you need it. I'm fine. You're not. But I get it. He straightened up. Just don't try to be a hero. Nobody here's going to judge you for handling your business. After he left, I stared at my computer screen without seeing it. I had emails to answer, accounts to manage, a presentation due Friday. Normal life, continuing like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. My phone buzzed. Preston's number this time. Daniel, we need to meet. Can you come by this afternoon? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But Emily retained counsel this morning, David Murphy. He's already reached out about starting negotiations. My stomach dropped. That was fast. She's motivated. Can you be here at 3? Preston's office looked the same as it had 2 days ago, but I felt different walking in. Less numb. More angry. He had papers spread across his desk. David Murphy is competent but not exceptional. He's going to push for a quick settlement, probably 50-50 custody, standard division of assets. And we're pushing for what? Primary custody for you, with Emily getting every other weekend and one weeknight. We argue that you provide the stable home environment. You're keeping the house, you have family support nearby, and you're not the one who blew up the marriage. Oregon's no fault. For the divorce itself, yes. But custody is about the children's best interests. A judge will consider which parent demonstrates better judgment and stability. He slid a document across the desk. Murphy sent over Emily's initial proposal. Take a look. I scanned it. Joint custody, alternating weeks. The house sold. Proceeds split evenly. Retirement accounts divided. She wanted half of everything, including half the time with Lily and Jake. She thinks she can cheat on me and still get half their lives? That's standard in Oregon, unfortunately. We'll argue against it, but you need to prepare for the possibility of shared custody. Preston folded his hands. The stronger argument is financial. She hasn't worked in 3 years. She'll need spousal support while she gets back on her feet, but we can limit the duration. Murphy's going to ask for 3 years minimum. 3 years of paying her to... I stopped myself. How much? Probably around $2,000 a month based on your income and her lack of employment, plus child support if she gets significant custody time. The numbers made my head spin. So I'm paying her to leave me? You're paying temporary support while she transitions to self-sufficiency. That's how the court sees it. He pulled out another document. But here's where we have leverage. I had my investigator pull some records. Emily's been spending heavily over the past 4 months. Hotels, restaurants, shopping, all on the joint credit card. He showed me the statement. Charges I'd never noticed because I'd trusted her to manage our day-to-day expenses while I focused on the big picture. $200 at a boutique downtown, $150 at a wine bar I'd never heard of. A hotel in Hood River. We'd never been to Hood River together. She spent our money on the affair, I said. Exactly. Oregon allows us to argue for reimbursement of marital funds used for extramarital purposes. It won't be dollar for dollar, but it strengthens our position, shows poor judgment and financial irresponsibility. I stared at the charges. Each one was a choice, a deliberate decision to take money we'd saved for our kids' future and spend it on Tyler. What's next? Murphy wants to meet for preliminary negotiations next week. You, me, Emily, and him in a conference room. We'll see if we can reach an agreement without going to trial. And if we can't? Then we file for a contested divorce and let a judge decide. Preston leaned back in his chair. But that takes months, costs tens of thousands in legal fees, and puts your kids through hell. Most cases settle. I want primary custody. I know. We'll fight for it. But Daniel, you need to think about what you're willing to compromise on. The house, the retirement accounts, spousal support duration. Figure out your priorities because you won't get everything. I drove home in a daze. The house felt emptier each time I walked in. I'd been living here for 6 years, but suddenly it felt like a museum of a life that didn't exist anymore. Photos on the walls of our wedding, of Emily pregnant with Lily, of family vacations to the coast. All of it felt like evidence of my own stupidity. I took down the wedding photo from the living room wall. Emily in white, smiling like she meant it. Me in my rented tux, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. I put it in a box in the garage. My phone rang. My mother. The kids are asking when they can come home, she said. Lily especially. She's worried something's wrong. What did you tell her? that you and Emily are working through some grown-up stuff and they're going to stay with us for a few days. But Daniel, they're not stupid. Lily knows something's off. I closed my eyes. Can you keep them until the weekend? I need a few more days to figure out what to say. Of course. But you'll need to tell them something soon. Kids imagine worse things than the truth. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and tried to imagine that conversation. Your mother and I are getting divorced. She made some choices that hurt our family. No, you didn't do anything wrong. Yes, we both still love you. The words felt hollow before I even said them. Another text from an unknown number. You're being cruel. I made a mistake, but I'm still their mother. Let me see them. I typed back before I could stop myself. You should have thought about that before you brought him into our bed. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. Never meant to hurt me. Like the affair just happened by accident. Like she tripped and fell onto Tyler 4 months worth of Tuesdays and Thursdays. Get a better lawyer, I typed. You're going to need one. I blocked that number too. The house was too quiet. I turned on the TV just for noise, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. How long had she been planning it? Had she ever loved me, or had I just been convenient? What had Tyler given her that I couldn't? I didn't want to care about the answer to that last one, but I did. My phone buzzed again. Preston. Murphy's pushing for mediation next Wednesday. You available? I'll be there, I typed back. 1 week until I'd have to sit across a table from Emily and negotiate the dismantling of our life together. 1 week to prepare myself to see her face and not fall apart. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I still hadn't slept there since Tuesday, and started stripping the bed. New sheets wouldn't erase what happened, but at least I wouldn't have to look at them anymore. The next morning, I woke up in what used to be the guest room. My neck ached from the cheap pillow. Emily had insisted we keep the good bedding upstairs, in a room I couldn't bring myself to enter anymore. I'd stripped that bed down to the mattress the night she left, stuffed everything into garbage bags, and left them by the curb. The garbage truck had come at 6 in the morning. I'd watched from this window as they threw away 8 years of my life, one black bag at a time. My phone showed 6:47 a.m., 12 missed calls from unknown numbers. Emily was getting creative, probably borrowing phones from anyone who'd listened to her version of events. I deleted the voicemails without listening. Preston had been clear. No direct contact. Everything goes through the attorneys now. I had 3 days before I had to pick up Lily and Jake from my parents' place. 3 days to figure out how to tell a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old that their mother wasn't coming home, that we'd be selling the house, that everything they knew as normal was gone. The coffee maker gurgled in the kitchen. I'd set it on a timer last night, one of those small acts of self-preservation that felt absurd given the circumstances. What did it matter if I had fresh coffee when my entire life had imploded? But I drank it anyway, standing at the counter where I'd set my keys 4 days ago, back when I thought I was coming home to celebrate. The promotion Thomas had hinted at still hadn't materialized. He'd sent an email yesterday saying corporate was reassessing the regional structure. I'd read it 3 times before the subtext sank in. They were putting me on hold, probably worried about my stability during a divorce. Funny how Emily's choices kept costing me in ways she'd never have to pay for. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table, surrounded by printouts Preston had told me to organize. Bank statements, credit card bills, that secret Facebook account with its trail of messages that made my stomach turn every time I looked at them. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Jay's taking the kids to soccer. We'll have the whole afternoon. Wore the dress you like. Daniel didn't even notice. Sometimes I think he wouldn't notice if I disappeared entirely. That one had been from January, 2 months before I found them. 2 months of her playing the role of exhausted mother and distant wife while planning her afternoons with Tyler. I'd been working late that week, trying to make up the hours I'd lost when Jake had the flu. She'd been annoyed that I missed dinner 3 nights in a row. The irony tasted worse than the coffee. I forced myself to focus on the documents. Preston wanted everything organized by category: joint expenses, individual expenses, evidence of marital funds used for the affair. That last category had grown disturbingly large. Hotel rooms in downtown Portland, expensive ones, not the kind of places you go if you're trying to hide. Restaurants where a single meal cost more than our weekly grocery budget. A weekend trip to the coast in February that she'd told me was a girls' trip with Jennifer. Jennifer. I still couldn't wrap my head around that betrayal. She'd been to our house for dinner a dozen times. She'd brought Lily a birthday present. She'd looked me in the eye and smiled while knowing exactly what Emily was doing behind my back. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "How are you holding up? The kids are asking when you're coming to get them. Jake wants to know if he can bring home the stray cat that's been hanging around." I typed back, "Tell him maybe. I'll be there Sunday evening. How are they doing?" The response came quickly. "They're fine, playing with your old Legos. But Daniel, you need to tell them soon." Jake asked why Mommy hasn't called. My chest tightened. Emily hadn't called them. Not once in 4 days. She'd blown up my phone trying to reach me, but she hadn't asked to talk to her own children. Preston had mentioned that. "Document it," he'd said. "Every day she doesn't contact them. It speaks to priorities." I was starting to hate how transactional this had all become. Every conversation, every action, every choice filtered through the lens of how it would play in court. But that's what Emily had reduced us to. Two people building cases against each other instead of a life together. Another text, this time from Preston. "Murphy sent over initial discovery requests. Need to meet today if possible. Also, we should discuss your counteroffer on custody. 2 p.m. work?" I confirmed and went back to the printouts. There was a charge from 3 weeks ago I'd missed, $347 at a boutique in the Pearl District. I pulled up our credit card statement and cross-referenced the date. March 2nd. That was the Saturday Emily had said she was helping Jennifer pick out furniture for her new apartment. I added it to the list. The house felt too quiet. Usually by now I'd hear Jake's cartoons blaring from the living room, or Lily practicing her recorder, badly, for her music class. The silence pressed against my eardrums like water, heavy and suffocating. I thought about Tyler, probably back at his gym right now, training his next client. Maybe telling the story to his buddies over protein shakes, how some guy came home early and caught him. I wondered if he felt anything at all, or if Emily was just another conquest in a long line of married women looking for excitement. Preston had advised against confronting him. "Nothing good comes from it," he'd said, "and it could hurt your case if things get physical." I hadn't planned on getting physical, but I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed my mind. My laptop chimed with an email notification. David Murphy, Emily's attorney, with the subject line, "Settlement Proposal, Wright v. Wright." I shouldn't open it without Preston. That was the smart move, the rational move. But my hand was already on the mouse. The proposal was laid out in cold, legal language. Emily wanted the house sold, proceeds split 50-50. She wanted spousal support of $2,400 per month for 4 years, more than Preston had estimated. She wanted 50-50 custody with alternating weeks, holidays split evenly, and she wanted me to maintain health insurance for her until she found employment. The kicker came in the final paragraph. Mrs. Wright is willing to waive spousal support in exchange for primary custody of the minor children, with Mr. Wright receiving standard visitation, alternating weekends and 1 evening per week. I read it twice, then a third time. She was offering to give up money she desperately needed since she hadn't worked in 3 years, in exchange for the kids. The same kids she hadn't bothered to call in 4 days. The same kids she'd been willing to leave with a babysitter so she could spend afternoons with her personal trainer. It was a bluff. It had to be. She was banking on me taking the financial relief, letting her keep the kids, avoiding the ugliness of a custody battle. She was counting on me being practical, being reasonable, being the same guy who'd worked overtime to pay for Lily's braces and Jake's college fund. But that guy had died on a Tuesday in March, standing in his bedroom doorway, watching his wife scramble for explanations. I forwarded the email to Preston with a single line. Not a chance. My phone rang immediately, Preston's name on the screen. "I see you got Murphy's proposal," he said, skipping pleasantries. "She hasn't called her kids in 4 days. "I know. We'll use that." Papers rustled in the background. This offer tells me something important. She's worried about the custody evaluation. She wouldn't be offering to waive support otherwise. What custody evaluation? The one I'm going to request. Given the circumstances of the affair, the deception, the use of marital funds, we can argue it speaks to judgment and stability. The court will likely order a psychological evaluation and home study for both of you. The thought of a stranger poking through my life, judging my fitness as a parent, made my skin crawl. But if it meant keeping my kids, do it, I said. It'll cost you. Evaluations run about $3,000, split between both parties. Another $1,500 I didn't have. But what choice did I have? Whatever it takes. The custody evaluator's name was Dr. Patricia Landry, and she had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Preston had warned me about her. 15 years of experience, testified in over 200 cases, and a reputation for being impossible to manipulate. "She's not there to like you," he'd said during our prep session. "She's there to assess your fitness as a parent. Answer her questions honestly. Don't badmouth Emily unless directly asked about specific incidents, and for God's sake, don't try to be charming." The evaluation was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m., 5 days after I'd filed the custody motion. Preston had pulled strings to get it expedited, citing Emily's lack of contact with the children as an urgent concern. I arrived at Dr. Landry's office 15 minutes early. The waiting room was aggressively neutral: beige walls, generic landscape paintings, a white noise machine humming in the corner. I dressed carefully that morning: khakis, a button-down shirt, nothing too formal or too casual. The clothes of a responsible parent. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened. "Mr. Wright?" Dr. Landry was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore glasses and a navy blazer and carried a tablet under one arm. "Thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. "Please come in." Her office was larger than the waiting room, but just as carefully neutral. A desk, 2 chairs, a couch against one wall. Bookshelves lined with texts on child psychology and family law. She gestured to one of the chairs and settled into the other, crossing her legs and opening her tablet. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to explain the process. This evaluation will involve multiple sessions with you, with Mrs. Wright, and with your children. I'll be assessing parenting capacity, the parent-child relationship, and each parent's ability to meet the children's physical and emotional needs. My report will be submitted to the court, and both attorneys will receive copies. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." She tapped something on her tablet. "Let's start with some background. You've been married to Emily Wright for 8 years?" "Yes." "And you have 2 children, Lily, age 7, and Jake, age 5? "That's correct." "Tell me about your typical routine with them, before the separation." I described the mornings: making breakfast, packing lunches, the drive to school. The evenings: homework with Lily, reading time with Jake, Dinner together at the table, weekends at the park, trips to the library, Jake's soccer games. Dr. Landry took notes, her expression unchanged. And Mrs. Wright's involvement in these routines? She was there, I said carefully. She helped with homework sometimes, made dinner a few nights a week. But I handled most of the day-to-day stuff. I have a more flexible work schedule. I see. More tapping on the tablet. Let's talk about the separation. When did you and Mrs. Wright begin living apart? Last Friday, 6 days ago. And the children are currently staying with your parents? Yes, in Eugene. They're enrolled in school there temporarily. How are they adjusting? This was harder. I'd called my parents every night, talked to Lily and Jake on video chat. Lily had been quiet, asking careful questions about when she could come home. Jake had been clingy with my mother, asking for Emily. They're confused, I said. They don't understand why we're not all together. I've told them their mom and I are having some problems, but I haven't explained the details. What do you plan to tell them? The truth. Age appropriately. When the time is right. Dr. Landry's pen paused. And what is the truth, Mr. Wright? From your perspective. I met her eyes. My wife had an affair. I discovered it when I came home early from work. She's been living with a friend since I asked her to leave. She hasn't called or texted the children in 6 days. Have you prevented her from contacting them? No, she has my parents' number. She could call any time. Why do you think she hasn't? The question landed like a punch. I'd been asking myself the same thing for days. Anger, I understood. Shame, maybe. But to go 6 days without talking to your own children? I don't know, I said honestly. You'd have to ask her. More notes. Dr. Landry's face remained impassive. Tell me about your relationship with Lily and Jake. What kind of father would you say you are? I thought about how to answer that. I'm present, I said finally. I know their teachers' names, their friends' names. I know Lily's afraid of thunderstorms and Jake won't eat anything green. I know how to braid hair and tie soccer cleats. I'm not perfect, but I show up. And Mrs. Wright? What kind of mother is she? This was the minefield Preston had warned me about. Don't badmouth her unless asked about specific incidents. She loves them, I said. I've never doubted that. But over the past few months, she's been distant, more focused on herself, going out more, spending less time at home. Did you discuss this with her? I tried. She said she needed space, time for herself. I thought she was just stressed. When did you first suspect the affair? I didn't. Not until I saw it. Dr. Landry looked up from her tablet. You had no suspicions at all? No. That must have been quite a shock. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. She made another note, then shifted in her chair. Let's talk about your living situation. You're still in the family home? Yes. The house is in both our names, but I'm making the mortgage payments. And you're employed full-time? Yes, I work in sales. My schedule is flexible. I can work from home when needed, adjust my hours for school pickup. Income? I gave her the number. She didn't react. Mrs. Wright's employment status? She works part-time at a boutique, 20 hours a week roughly. What are your childcare arrangements if you're awarded primary custody? My parents can help short-term. Long-term, I'm looking into after-school programs. I can also adjust my schedule, work earlier, be home by 3. And if Mrs. Wright is awarded primary custody? The question made my jaw tighten. Then I'll request maximum visitation and stay as involved as possible. But you're seeking primary custody yourself. Yes? Why? Because she abandoned them. Because she hasn't called in 6 days. Because she chose a man she barely knew over the family we built together. Because I'm the stable parent, I said instead. I've been their primary caregiver for years. I know their routines, their needs. They're already dealing with the trauma of their parents separating. They need consistency, not more upheaval. Dr. Landry studied me for a long moment. You seem angry, Mr. Wright. I am angry. At Mrs. Wright? Yes. Do the children see that anger? No. I kept my voice level. I've been careful. They don't know the details of why we separated, and I haven't spoken negatively about their mother in front of them. But you are speaking negatively about her now. You asked me direct questions. I'm answering honestly. Another note. Another unreadable expression. Tell me about a typical weekend with your children. What would you do? The shift in topic was deliberate, I knew. Testing whether I could move past the anger, focus on the practical. I described Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Jake riding on my shoulders while Lily picked out fruit. Sunday afternoons at the library, then the park if the weather was good. Movie nights with popcorn, the kids in their pajamas on the couch. And Mrs. Wright's involvement in these activities? She came sometimes, not always. Why not always? She said she needed time to herself, to see friends, go to the gym. Did that bother you? At the time, a little. I thought she was being selfish. Now I know what she was actually doing. Dr. Landry's pen moved across her tablet. We'll be speaking with Lily and Jake next week. Is there anything you'd like me to know before I meet with them? I thought about Lily's careful questions on the phone. Jake asking when Mommy was coming back. They're good kids, I said. They deserve better than this. Better than what, specifically? Better than a mother who disappears. Better than having their family destroyed because someone got bored. The words came out harsher than I'd intended. Dr. Landry made another note. I think that's enough for today, she said, standing. I'll be in touch about scheduling the children's sessions. Please have them available next Thursday afternoon. I stood as well, suddenly exhausted. They're in Eugene, with my parents. I'm aware. I'll conduct the evaluation there. She walked me to the door, shook my hand again with that same professional grip. One more question, Mr. Wright. If you could have anything you wanted from this custody arrangement, what would it be? The answer came immediately. My kids, safe, happy, with me. Dr. Landry nodded once, her expression finally showing something, though I couldn't read what. Thank you for your time. The door closed behind me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before starting the engine, hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd done well, I thought. Stayed calm, answered honestly, didn't lose my temper. But I kept thinking about that last question. What did I want? My kids? My life back? The family I'd thought I had? And Emily, I wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. My phone buzzed. A text from Preston. How did it go? Fine, I typed back. I think. Good. Emily's evaluation is tomorrow. We'll compare notes after. I put the phone down and started driving home. To the empty house, the quiet rooms, the bed I still couldn't bring myself to sleep in. 6 days since she'd left. 6 days since she'd called our children. I wondered what she'd tell Dr. Landry tomorrow. What story she'd construct. What justifications she'd offer. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I had to call Lily and Jake. Tell them I loved them. Promise them everything would be okay. And hope, somehow, I could make it true. Epilogue. 18 months later, I stood in the kitchen of a smaller house, a 3-bedroom ranch in Beaverton that I'd closed on 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized. The mortgage was manageable, the backyard had room for Jake's soccer goals, and Lily had already claimed the bedroom with the window seat. It wasn't the house they'd grown up in, but it was becoming home. Dad, we're going to be late. Lily's voice carried down the hallway, that particular tone of exasperation that 7-year-olds, now 8-year-olds, had perfected. 2 minutes, I called back, pouring coffee into a travel mug. The custody evaluation had taken 3 weeks. Dr. Landry had interviewed me twice more, spent an afternoon with Lily and Jake and Eugene, then another session with them at Emily's apartment. She'd reviewed financial records, spoken to teachers and my parents, even interviewed Jennifer, though what Jennifer had to say apparently hadn't helped Emily's case. The final report had been 37 pages long. I'd read it 4 times, each word a small vindication wrapped in clinical language. Dr. Landry had noted Emily's concerning lack of contact with the minor children during the initial separation period, and my consistent engagement in parenting responsibilities. She'd documented the affair's impact on marital finances and Emily's pattern of deception that raises questions about judgment and reliability. Her recommendation, primary physical custody to me, with Emily receiving alternating weekends and 1 weeknight dinner. Emily had fought it anyway. We'd gone to trial, spent 3 days in a courtroom while lawyers argued over who deserved our children more. I'd testified about the affair, about coming home early, about the 4 months of lies. Emily had cried on the stand, talked about postpartum depression she'd never mentioned before, claimed she'd made a mistake but was still a good mother. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Smith, had listened to everything with the same impassive expression Dr. Landry had worn. Then she'd issued her ruling. Primary custody to me, exactly as recommended. Emily got her weekends, her Wednesday dinners, and a lecture about the importance of maintaining consistent contact with her children. The spousal support had been set at $1,800 a month for 3 years. Less than Emily wanted, more than I'd hoped for. But Preston had gotten me reimbursement for the marital funds she'd spent on the affair, nearly $14,000 that went straight into the kids' college funds. The house had sold for $430,000. After paying off the mortgage and splitting the equity, I'd walked away with enough for a down payment on this place. Emily had moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in southeast Portland, 20 minutes from her new job at a marketing firm. Tyler was long gone. According to Jennifer, who'd tried to apologize to me at the grocery store 6 months ago, an apology I'd accepted with a curt nod and nothing more, he'd ended things with Emily 2 weeks after I'd caught them. Apparently, the reality of a messy divorce and 2 kids had been less appealing than the fantasy. "Dad!" Lily appeared in the doorway, backpack already on, hair in the French braid I'd finally learned to do properly after watching 17 YouTube videos. It's 7:43. I know. I grabbed my keys and the lunch boxes I'd packed last night. Jake ready? He can't find his cleats. Of course he couldn't. I found them in the garage, right where he'd left them after practice Tuesday. Jake was sitting on his bed, looking worried. He'd inherited my tendency to panic when running late. Got him, buddy. Let's go. The drive to school took 12 minutes. Lily talked the entire way about her science project, something involving volcanoes and baking soda. Jake hummed to himself in the back seat, kicking his feet against my seat in a rhythm only he understood. Normal. This was normal now. I pulled into the drop-off lane, and Lily unbuckled herself with the efficiency of a kid who'd done this 1,000 times. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. Have a good day. Jake took longer, fumbling with his buckle until I reached back to help. He threw his arms around my neck, squeezed tight. Love you, Daddy. Love you more, Jake. I watched them walk into the building together, Lily's hand automatically reaching for Jake's when they got to the door. Something in my chest loosened, the way it did every morning when I saw them safe and whole despite everything they'd been through. My phone buzzed as I pulled out of the parking lot. A text from Emily. Running late. Can you keep them an extra hour tonight? Tonight was Wednesday, her dinner night. The 3rd time this month she'd asked to adjust the schedule. Fine, I typed back. But this can't keep happening. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. I'd stopped expecting apologies from her. Stopped expecting much of anything, really. She showed up for her weekends most of the time. Took the kids to dinner on Wednesdays when work didn't interfere. She'd started dating someone new, a guy named Brian who worked in her office, someone age-appropriate and apparently stable. Lily had mentioned him once, said he was okay, I guess. I'd never met him. Didn't want to. The kids had adjusted better than I'd feared. Lily had needed a few sessions with a therapist, doctor. Patricia Landry had recommended someone to work through her feelings about the divorce. She'd been angry at first, then sad, then just resigned in that way kids get when they realize adults don't have all the answers. Jake had been easier, or maybe just younger. He'd accepted the new normal with the flexibility of a 5-year-old, now 6, whose main concerns were whether his dinosaur collection could fit in both houses and if we could still get pizza on Fridays. We could. We did. Work had stabilized. The promotion had eventually come through, 8 months late, but with a raise that made the mortgage payments manageable. Thomas had pulled me aside after it was announced, told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything. Not everyone keeps it together like you did, he'd said. I'd wanted to tell him that I hadn't kept it together, that I'd spent months barely sleeping, that I'd cried in my car more times than I could count, that some mornings I still woke up expecting to see Emily beside me before reality crashed back in. But I just said thank you. My parents had been rocks throughout everything. They'd kept the kids for 3 weeks during the worst of it, had testified at the custody hearing about my involvement as a father. My mother still called every Sunday, asking if I needed anything, if the kids were okay, if I was eating enough. I always said yes, even when the answer was no. The house felt empty when I got home from work that evening, the way it always did before I picked up the kids. I'd gotten used to it. The quiet, the space to think, the absence of small voices and constant questions. But I didn't like it. The silence reminded me too much of those first days after Emily left, when the house had felt like a mausoleum of our failed marriage. I changed out of my work clothes, started dinner prep. Spaghetti tonight, Jake's favorite, and easy enough that I could make it without thinking too hard. My phone rang at 5:47, Emily's number. Hey, I can't do dinner tonight. Her voice sounded strained. Something came up at work. Can you just keep them overnight? This was the 4th time in 2 months. I felt the familiar irritation rise, pushed it back down. It's your custody time, Emily. I know, but I can't help it. This project deadline moved up and you could help it. You could tell your boss you have a prior commitment. Silence on the other end. Then, are you really going to make this difficult? I'm not making anything difficult. I'm pointing out that you have 2 kids who expect to see you tonight. They'll see me this weekend. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Daniel? The edge in her voice was sharper now. You want me to grovel? Apologize again? I'm doing my best here. I counted to 5, breathing slowly. Your best would be showing up when you're supposed to. God, you're exhausting. I heard her exhale, could picture her rubbing her temples the way she used to when we fought. Fine, I'll pick them up at 7. Happy? I'm never happy about you treating our kids like an obligation you can reschedule, but yes, 7 works. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the pot of water that hadn't boiled yet, and felt the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. This was my life now. Co-parenting with someone I used to love, someone I now barely tolerated. Negotiating over dinner schedules and weekend swaps, fighting back anger every time she treated our children like an inconvenience. But the alternative, letting her walk all over the custody agreement, teaching Lily and Jake that commitments didn't matter, was worse. The water boiled. I added the pasta, set the timer, and called my parents to let them know I wouldn't need them to pick up the kids tonight after all. She's coming? My mother sounded surprised. She says she is. Well, that's something. Emily showed up at 7:14, pulling into the driveway in the Honda she'd bought, after we sold her old car to cover her security deposit. She looked tired, older somehow, though it had only been 18 months. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She wore clothes I didn't recognize. She was a stranger who happened to share my last name for a few more weeks. The divorce had included a clause allowing her to revert to her maiden name, and she'd filed the paperwork last month. Lily and Jake ran out to meet her, backpacks bouncing. Emily hugged them both, smiled in a way that looked almost genuine. Whatever else she did love them. I'd never doubted that, even at my angriest. She looked up at me, standing in the doorway. I'll have them back by 8 tomorrow night. School night. Make sure they do their homework. I know how to parent, Daniel. Just a reminder. She loaded the kids into her car, buckled Jake in while Lily did her own seatbelt. I watched from the porch, making sure everything was secure, that they had their backpacks and jackets. Emily caught me looking. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. Then it was gone. She drove away, and I went back inside to an empty house and leftover spaghetti I'd eat standing at the counter. The months continued like that. A rhythm developed, uncomfortable but functional. Emily took her weekends mostly, showed up for Wednesday dinners usually. I handled everything else. School conferences, doctor's appointments, the day-to-day machinery of raising children. I dated, briefly. A woman named Ashley I'd met at a work conference, kind and funny, and nothing like Emily. It had lasted 3 months before I'd ended it. Not because of Ashley, she'd been great, but because I'd realized I was still carrying too much anger to be fair to anyone new. You need to forgive her, my mother had said when I'd told her about the breakup. Not for Emily's sake, for yours. I'd nodded, said I was working on it. I wasn't sure I'd ever get there. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I sat in the bleachers at Jake's soccer game, watching my son run up and down the field with more enthusiasm than skill. Lily sat beside me, reading a book and occasionally glancing up to cheer when I nudged her. Emily was there too, sitting 3 rows down with Brian. They'd gotten engaged last month. Lily had shown me the ring Emily had been wearing when she'd picked them up for the weekend. A modest diamond, nothing like the one I'd given her. I'd felt nothing looking at it. No anger, no jealousy, just a distant curiosity about whether this one would last. Brian seemed decent enough from what the kids said. He didn't try to be their dad, didn't overstep. He was just there, a fixture in their mother's life that they'd adapted to the way kids adapt to everything. Jake scored a goal, his first of the season, and the bleachers erupted. I was on my feet, cheering, Lily beside me jumping up and down. 3 rows down, Emily was clapping, smiling. For a moment, we were just 2 parents watching their kids succeed. The history between us, the betrayal, the divorce, the custody battle, faded into background noise. Jake ran over after the game, sweaty and grinning. "Did you see, Dad? Did you see?" "I saw, buddy. That was amazing." Emily approached, Brian trailing behind. "Great job, Jake," she said, ruffling his hair. "Thanks, Mom." We stood there, the 5 of us, in an awkward cluster. Brian looked uncomfortable. Emily looked tired. The kids looked happy. "Good game," I said finally, nodding to Emily. "Yeah, he's getting better. Practice helps." "I know, I've been—" She stopped, started again. "Brian and I have been working with him in the backyard on the weekends." "That's good. That's really good." Silence. Then Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Can we get ice cream?" "Sure, sweetheart." I looked at Emily. "You want to come?" The invitation surprised me as much as it did her. But Jake was looking up hopefully, and Lily was already nodding. And maybe this was what moving forward looked like. "Okay," Emily said slowly. "Yeah, ice cream sounds good." We drove separately to the shop near the school, ordered cones, sat at a picnic table while the kids ran around the small playground nearby. Brian made small talk about the game. Emily added comments here and there. I listened more than I spoke. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. But it was civil, functional. Two people who destroyed each other learning to exist in the same space for the sake of their children. When we left, Emily stopped me by my car. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the ice cream, for being decent about this. There are kids. We both have to be decent." She nodded, looked like she wanted to say something else, then changed her mind. "See you Wednesday." "See you Wednesday." I drove home with Lily and Jake chattering in the back seat, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt something like peace. The final spousal support payment went through on a Tuesday in October, 3 years to the day after I'd found Emily with Tyler. I watched the transfer complete on my banking app, felt the weight of that obligation finally lift. I was free. Legally, financially, completely free. The house in Beaverton had appreciated. The kids were thriving. Lily in 4th grade now, Jake in 2nd. My career had stabilized, then grown. I'd made senior director last year, had a team of 12 people reporting to me. Life had continued, despite everything. I thought about Emily sometimes, about the woman I'd married and the stranger she'd become. I thought about Tyler, wherever he was now, probably working his way through other people's marriages. I thought about the choices that had led us all here. Her choice to cheat, my choice to document everything, our mutual choice to destroy rather than repair. I didn't regret the divorce, didn't regret fighting for custody. The kids needed stability, needed a parent who showed up consistently, and I'd given them that. But I did regret the bitterness I'd carried for so long. The anger that had poisoned those first years, that had leaked into interactions with Emily, and probably affected the kids more than I'd wanted to admit. My mother had been right. Forgiveness wasn't about Emily. It was about me, about letting go of the weight I'd been carrying. So I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I sent Emily a text. The last support payment went through today. We're done with all the legal stuff. I just wanted to say, I hope you're happy. I hope Brian treats you well. And I hope we can keep being decent to each other for Lily and Jake's sake. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Thank you. I hope you're happy too. You deserve to be. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I'm getting there. And I was. There's no tidy moral to this story. No simple lesson that wraps everything up neatly. Betrayal happened. A marriage ended. 2 people who'd promised forever couldn't make it past 8 years. But life continued anyway. I learned that trust, once broken, can't be rebuilt with the same person, at least not for me. I learned that some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. I learned that protecting yourself and your children isn't the same as being vindictive, even when it feels like it. Most importantly, I learned that the end of one story can be the beginning of another. The family I'd thought I had was gone, but a new family had formed in its place. Me and Lily and Jake, finding our way together. Building something different, but no less real. Emily would always be their mother. Brian would probably become their stepfather. There would be more awkward soccer games, more shared ice cream trips, more moments of forced civility that might someday become genuine, and I would keep showing up. Keep being present. Keep being the parent who stayed. That was enough. It had to be. 5 years after the divorce, I stood in my backyard watching Jake practice penalty kicks while Lily sat on the porch doing homework. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Inside, dinner was in the oven, lasagna, made from scratch because I'd finally learned how. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Daniel. This is Ashley. We met at that conference a few years ago. I know this is random, but I'm in Portland for work next week. Would you want to grab coffee? I stared at the message, remembering the kind woman I'd dated briefly. The relationship I'd ended because I wasn't ready. Maybe I was ready now. Coffee sounds good, I typed back. Wednesday work? Perfect. Looking forward to it. I put the phone away and called the kids in for dinner. They came running, arguing about whose turn it was to set the table, filling the house with noise and life and all the beautiful chaos of being a parent. This was my life now. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd thought I wanted, but mine, built from the ashes of what came before. And for the first time in 5 years, that felt like enough.